It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is brought to you in part by Betcher, Martin, Jean, and Jackson, when hurt people need help. Betcher, Martin, Jean, and Jackson in Ponca City. It's time for The Verdict.
And welcome to The Verdict again. I'm Mick Cornett. Glad you're with us. My co-host is Kent Myers. Kent is one of Oklahoma's top legal experts. And Kent, a sports angle to today's show.
Yes, no legalities here today, or at least not that we know of. We haven't finished the show, so we don't know whether we've libeled or slandered anybody yet. But we are having on today Barry Trammell for another visit with us. Barry is, as far as most people are concerned, the leading sports writer and columnist in the state, and very prominent in the Southwest, and an Oklahoma native. Barry comes to us with a lot of information about things that are going on in our community and in our state, and we think our viewers are going to enjoy his views. We've called this show The Scribe Speaks, and he certainly qualifies as a scribe here in Oklahoma. I think it'll be interesting, and we're really pleased he'd take time to come back and visit with us.
We'll get to it. Barry Trammell today on The Verdict.
Didn't realize?
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce our guest.
Pleased to have a friend of The Verdict back again for another visit, Barry Trammell. Barry is a Norman resident, started out his journalism career at the Norman Transcript, is now with the Oklahoman here in Oklahoma City. He's also on the radio on WWLS, the sports animal, on a show called Writer's Block. Not that Barry has ever had writer's block, I'm sure, but you will want to tune in on that from 12 to 2 during the week, weekdays, I believe. He's coming back for his second appearance here on The Verdict, and we're pleased so much that you join us again.
Thanks, guys.
Barry, the biggest issue in journalism the last 5 years has been convergence. The internet, radio, television, newspaper, staffs are getting smaller. Everybody's trying to converge into one central newsroom or assignment desk. The Oklahoman's been involved in that. What's your thoughts on convergence and the way that's worked at the Oklahoman?
Well, I think it's done well for the Oklahoman promotion-wise. I think that's where newspapers have sort of gotten the best end of the deal. We're not as good at promoting ourselves historically as television and radio is. Those people have helped us promote. We've helped them with content. It seems to have worked pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And are you comfortable with it? You have a radio slot on the Sports Animal,
right,
along with your column, and of course all your work is on the internet.
I'm comfortable with it. I'm not going to quit my day job anytime soon. People ask me how to describe myself. I say I'm a newspaper man, and they just give me a microphone every once in a while. But no, I'm not going to switch sides anytime soon.
But you have a very casual stance, and you've tried to be yourself on the radio. Have you gotten any advice? Have people said you need to do this, you need to do that? Because it seems to me like you've done it your own way.
No, the thing that shocked me about radio is people haven't said much of anything to me. I mean, they just, here you go, and you do it. And, you know, in newspapers, we sort of mentor people, and we sort of bring them along. Didn't really happen in radio. They just threw me out there and said, sink. And the one advice I got was my first boss said, no, protect your voice. Don't go talking a lot when you're off the air. As everybody can tell, I don't really follow that too good. So I can't do much about this Okie twang.
Which is more fun, researching and writing a good column, or doing a radio show?
Fun's an interesting question. It's writing is much more hard work. Writing is hard work. Sometimes I feel when I got to sit down and really write, I feel the same way I do when I got to go outside and do yard work in the middle of the day. I mean, I just got to make myself do it.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more fulfilling, I think. So in the end result is more fun. The process is not quite as much fun.
Barry, let me ask you a question about Oklahoma City. My co-host here, cohort Mick Cornett, was proud and excited, as we all were, to announce the Big 12 events coming to Oklahoma City in the near future. Oklahoma City seems to be becoming a magnet for all kinds of events, sporting and otherwise. You had a relatively recent column about the possibility of Major League sports coming to Oklahoma City, and I know you focused mainly on the NHL, but what do you see about Oklahoma City's changing face that is positive for the sports fan here in the city?
Well, I thought the announcement that the Big 12 basketball tournament was coming to Oklahoma City in 2007 was about the best piece of sports news that I can remember, other than maybe a facility being built, the Bricktown Ballpark or the Ford Center. This is a big-time event, the Big 12 basketball. I mean, you can't go out and really just sort of commandeer it and see if it works. To me, it was sort of a validation of everything that Oklahoma City's been doing for the last 10, 15 years. And I think it's only going to lead to more good things for the city. You know, when I looked at the prospect of Major League sports, and people say, well, we can do it, can we do it, can we not, won't work, might work. You can say that about almost every city that was on the verge of Major League status. Phoenix is now a metropolis that has everything, including the major circuits in auto racing. It's got the 4 major team sports. Until 1987 or 1988, Phoenix was a one franchise town. Phoenix Suns of the NBA, the only major league sports in town. And the Suns were there 20 years before anybody else came. And, it could be the same in Oklahoma City. I mean, until you get a major league franchise, you're not a major league city in the sports vernacular. And you have to get that to prove your worth. I think, and I think Mick agrees with me, I think a major league franchise could make it here. And I think if it does, it only feeds other things. And we just grow from there.
It is interesting to me, kind of address this to both of you, but these facilities, the Ford Center and the Cox Center, combined with the hotel space and all, weren't necessarily primarily designed to get sporting events. They were designed to get other things and tourists and meetings and so on. But they're also getting the larger sporting events as well, or at least has the prospect of alluring them. Do you think, Mick, at the time these were on the drawing board, that sports was a main focus?
Well, I think there was talk of an NHL franchise, in the 90s, in the decade of the 90s, and hockey's kind of gone up and down, and it's currently at one of its lower levels. I think the big success of the Ford Center has been the concert success, that we're one of the top 10 facilities in the United States. I don't think anyone, even the largest optimist for the Ford Center, could have envisioned the success they've had there. And I still sometimes I shake my head when I see the gate receipts from some of these concerts. Where's all this money coming from? We always hear about how people in Oklahoma City don't have the money to support.
Yeah,
those
they only
big
have
line
so
events.
much money.
And somebody's buying these tickets.
Yeah, and in relation to that, I think one of the great underrated stories of Oklahoma City's success was the Myriad, because the Myriad opened in '72. 20 years later is when Maps came along and really, invigorated the city. But when you look back at what the Myriad did for Oklahoma City and has done for Oklahoma City, all the events, particularly the NCAA championship success at the Myriad with wrestling and with basketball, the Myriad to me was sort of a shining example that this city, even when we didn't even realize it ourselves, this city got things done. This city took chances, and this city was on the cutting edge. And I just think that's you put that with the MAP success, now with the concerts, the Big 12 basketball tournament. I mean, I just think these things are just going to grow and grow and grow, and we're on the verge of a boom, I believe.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. We're speaking with Barry Trammel, the Daily Oklahoman, and the Sports Animal, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and Barry Trammell. Kent, where to now?
Well, we were talking before we took the break about Oklahoma City's almost magnet status now for top quality athletic events. I'm curious how you think this will impact OU and OSU. Should they feel threatened about it? Should they join in and applaud and pat Oklahoma City on the back? What impact do you think it'll have?
Well, two schools of thought. Both OU and OSU. OU's done it, OSU is doing it. It built new stadium structures with luxury suites, pretty high dollar commodities, and have done well selling them. If sports gets, the Major League comes to Oklahoma City, will that siphon off money from OU and OSU, or will it fail because it can't siphon off money? Two schools of thought. One is, no, there's not enough money to go around. Somebody's going to suffer. The other thought is, no, it won't. One just begets the other and aids the other. That'll be interesting to see, because that's the future, or not the future, it's the present. That's where you make your money in big sales like that. We see that with the Ford Center, with the luxury suites. That's the main difference between a new arena and an old arena, is the luxury suites. You've got to sell those. So if it hurts one or the other, that's where it'll be, is in the top dollar that you go after the corporations.
Well, Barry, let's talk about Oklahoma State's most, recent big announcement. I thought was the ascension of Sean Sutton to what, head coach designate? Is that the official title? Your thoughts on that whole the way that played out over the last few years and the results?
Well, it's very unusual. You don't see that. I've found only really there's only 2 or 3 instances where a school has gone ahead and say, hey, this guy's going to be our coach in the future whenever our current guy decides to step down. It's only happened once that I know of where it was a father-son, and that was at DePaul in the 1980s. I think it's a great thing for Oklahoma State. I think we've already seen some of the benefits with the recruiting that seems to have really taken off for OSU, just because I think people have used that against OSU in recent years. Eddie Sutton's getting old. He's not going to coach. You don't know who's going to be your coach if you sign. You can't say that anymore to kids because they know exactly what's going to happen. I think it's a great thing for OSU because I think Sean Sutton has deserved this job. I think he's earned it. He's basically been the co-coach at OSU for 3, 4, 5, maybe even longer years. If you like the way the program's going, I think you have to give the job to Sean, and I think everybody's got to like the way the program's going.
Facility upgrades in Stillwater for first for basketball and now for football. Your thoughts on that?
As much as we've done in Oklahoma City, and as amazing as it is, and we see it every day, and as much pride as we take in it, that's not the most unbelievable story in the state. What they've done in Stillwater is amazing. If you were in the old Gallagher-Iba, which I know you were many times, Mick, remember when it was, the 6,300, and you heard talk about, well, we're going to double the size and keep the intimacy, and you just thought it was a pipe dream, and you just thought it was lunatics talking. Well, they did it. I mean, it's the phenomenal place that seats 13,000. Now they're bricking the football stadium. They're building a beautiful monument of a football stadium, and I was a little skeptical. I was skeptical on both, whether they could get them both done. They're getting them both done, and it's a great thing for OSU.
Well, let's kind of switch gears down to Norman at OU and talk a little bit about one topic I was kind of interested in your views about. Recent articles in the Oklahoman about OU scheduling Duke in Madison Square Garden next season. Some other, 3 of the final 4 teams OU plays this next year. Is Kelvin Sampson tickled about this kind of scheduling, or is he asking Joe Castiglione to slow down?
Well, he's probably got mixed emotions. 2 things. One is Oklahoma has really accelerated its basketball program. Its facility upgrades, not necessarily in Lloyd Noble, but the practice facility, state-of-the-art. The Sooners are really have upgraded basketball from where it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And that goes to scheduling also. One thing OU has to do, though, is they've got to schedule some big names to get people interested in December. Oklahoma is a football school, and we can sit and talk until the cows come home about how do you change that, but you don't change it. It's a football school. If you want to get the people interested in basketball, especially early in the season, you've got to do some different things. Playing UConn, playing Duke, playing Purdue, playing Tulsa. These are things you have to do, and I think that's what Oklahoma's doing.
What do you think about the, speaking of football school, what's your take on the upcoming season for the OU football team?
Well, they're going to be good. They're going to be really good. If Jason White can stay healthy, the offense should be just as, as prolific as it was last season when it, 50 points a game. All those, 10 starters back on offense. The one guy that's not back is tight end, and, he wasn't a major part of the offense. Defense, they lost some stars, but they've got a lot of players. I tell you, Bob Stoops has really recruited well. They're going to be really good. Comes down to 2 or 3 games. Texas, Big 12 title game, a bowl game. Sometimes you win those, sometimes you don't. But it's going to be, well, yeah, you got to tackle, you got to block a little bit. But those, they're going to be really good. And it's going to be fun because that gets most everybody fired up in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
What about Oklahoma State?
OSU's in a transition year, Mick, and if they can weather this storm, if they can get through this season with a decent year, a winning record, a bowl game, I think it's a sign that Oklahoma State's arrived as a perennial contender for a good season. Not necessarily contend every year for a title, but it wasn't that long ago where a bowl trip was just a huge thing for Oklahoma State. If OSU can make that goal again this year, with having lost so many veterans, I think that's a sign that, hey, this program's taken another step. The talent's increased. This is going to be an annual thing. Oklahoma State is here to stay.
Recruiting violations are nothing new. We recently saw Colorado go through quite a bit. Because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State have remained relatively clean on the surface for the last 15 years or so, I think there was this presumption, at least in our market, that college football's cleaned up its act. And I think they think the good guys do really win. What's your take on that whole situation?
I think college sports in general and football in particular have cleaned up their act. And I think what we used to see was rampant recruiting violations. We're seeing less of that. Now we still see it at Missouri basketball. We still saw it in Alabama football. But for the most part, we don't see it that much anymore. What we do see is new kinds of scandals. The Baylor tragedy, the Iowa State, Larry Eustace drinking. Now the Colorado sex scandals. What I think we're going to see is I think the NCAA is going to take a hard look at that and impose even more restrictions on what you can do with a kid when he comes to campus.
I have a question. What's the workload of Barry Trammell? How many columns are you expected to write a week, radio show, et cetera, et cetera? What do your bosses expect out of you?
Well, I do 5 columns a week, most weeks, occasionally 4, occasionally 6, but mostly 5. And then once a quarter, I'll do a major enterprise story, the redemption of Eddie Sutton, something like that. That's a story I did in March. So I do 5 radio shows a week, 5 columns a week, and it's pretty good workload. But it's what I love to do. So it's not. I'm not itching to get out of it.
When you sit down, you have a choice of sitting down and watching a sporting event. And you can turn on the tube and you can select any sport you'd want to just watch, but you can only select one. What would it be? One
event, I would probably pick the U.S. Open golf tournament. I just love the U.S. Open golf tournament. One day, I'd pick a college football Saturday. Now, I'll have to work them, so I never get to do this. But I would love to just get up, read my papers, get in front of the TV about 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and turn it off about midnight, having watched 12 or 13 games. Now, that's a good day to me.
Barry, we appreciate you coming on The
Thanks,
Verdict.
guys.
Thanks, Barry.
Barry Trammell, Daily Oklahoman. Kent and I'll be back with a final word after this. Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Barry Trammell was today's guest.
It's always good. We've only had him on twice, but it's always good to talk to him and see him again. His perceptions are well-founded, and he's thought things out. He brings up things that we haven't thought about much, and I hope our viewers enjoyed Barry's visit. Mick, I know that you a while back had a chance to spend a day or two in Boston and got to go to one of my favorite venues, Fenway Park. What was that experience like for you?
Well, you know, we talk a lot about new facilities. Fenway Park, built in, I think, 1912. It shows you don't have to be a new facility to enjoy yourself. And they've done a good job, you know, of adding some 21st century amenities to a really old and stately place. But, you know, there's still nothing like one of the older stadiums to watch a baseball game.
My fond memories of Fenway Park was, one of them was how easy it was to get to and how easy it was to exit and to get home. The subways and all just made the trip to the ballpark and away from the ballpark an easy, enjoyable experience, and sometimes that's not always the case when you go to large sporting events.
Interesting, isn't it, that the Boston and the Chicago Cub fans are two of the most loyal fan bases, yet they've had the horrible success at winning the World Championship. And I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence. I mean, I think there's something to that they bound together because they know they have not won the championship in so long.
Well, and they're both cursed teams.
Yeah, that's right. Curse of the Bambino.
Bambino, and then the Cubs has got some curse of the.
That's right, they do. It's less known, but you're right. There is a curse from the Cubs too.
Yeah. Well, what's new on the horizon for Oklahoma City announcements?
Well, there'll be some business announcements certainly this summer and later in the summer, and I think the big thing in the near future will be a December opportunity for Oklahoma City voters to vote for a hotel motel tax increase that would put some money into capital improvements at the fairgrounds. So you'll see that coming this way too.
Good. We'll look for it.
That's right. Barry Trammel was our guest today. We enjoyed having Barry on. Hope he'll come back again and visit us too. Hope you'll also come back and visit us on The Verdict. We'll see you later.
Do a promo.
Yeah, we can.